to start off with a prize. I'm going to give a prize away. I have a brand new book that just came out. It's all on the Gospel of Matthew, which is what all the Sunday readings are going to be about this next year for year A in the church. So it's called God With Us. And here's my question for the prize, if I can get this on the screen here. So this is the book I'm going to be speaking on today, Men, Women, the Mystery of Love. And I have a question to ask. Does anyone in this room have a copy of that book with them right now? And if you do, the first person to come up right here and hand it to me, if I can borrow it just for my talk, because I want to quote from it, you'll get a free copy of this book. And I'll give you back the Men, Women, the Mystery of Love. There we go. All right. What's your name? Ben. I'm sorry? Ben. Ben, where are you from? Nebraska. Ben from Nebraska gets a copy of my new book. Here you go, Ben. Hey, Ben. There you go. All right. Now I am ready. Yeah, there's some things I wanted to quote in here. So, when we think about this topic here today, I am reminded of kayaking. So I'm going to tell you a fun adventure my wife and I went on our first year of marriage. So we were living in Kansas. We were living and teaching at Benedictine College way back in the early days of Focus. And we did our summer training in Colorado, and the young missionaries would go out into the Rocky Mountains on various adventures. And one weekend they were going kayaking, and we said, let's go. This will be awesome. I've never done kayaking before. And we got up there, and the guide was giving us all these instructions on how to operate the kayak. And I don't remember much of what he taught us that day, but there's one lesson I will never forget, and that is this. He said, if you happen to fall out of the kayak, don't try to stand up in the river. It's really shallow. You'll think you can stand up, but the river's so powerful, it's just going to knock you down. Just hold on to your life jacket, get above the surface, make it to the side, but don't try to stand up in the river. Then he went on and told us many other lessons, and I don't remember much of that. And we finally got into our kayaks. I'm in the front seat, my wife's in the back, and we set off with our group following our guide. And for like the first 7-8 minutes, it was smooth sailing there in the beautiful Rocky Mountains of Colorado. We're taking in all this nature, snow-capped mountains, blue skies. It was incredible. But we knew we were going to be tested. We knew that eventually we were going to hit our first whitewater rapids. And sure enough, I heard the roar of those first rapids coming. And my heart started racing, and the adrenaline's pumping. And we go into those first rapids, and all of a sudden we almost completely capsized to the left. And I tried to correct, and we almost capsized completely over to the right. But eventually, we were completely drenched, but we pushed through. We made it to the other side, and we conquered our first rapids that day. And I turned around to my wife and said, we did it, honey. And she had a look of horror on her face. She was going like this. Because when I turned around sideways to celebrate prematurely, I turned the kayak down sideways as well, too. And we were now going sideways down the river. And the momentum carried us backwards. We did a 180. We're going backwards now in the Arkansas River. And eventually I just let it make a full 360 to get us straight up again. But it was too late. You see, there was a big tree that had fallen halfway over the river, and everybody else followed our guide around that tree, but we were headed straight forward. And I don't know if you know what happens when you hit a strainer like that in the river. Immediately, the kayak is just sucked under the water and swept away. No more kayak. And my wife and I are hanging onto this log because the river is trying to push us down as well. And we're desperately holding onto this log, and I have no idea what's on the other side of this. Is this a beaver dam? Is there a bunch of rocks? Is there a waterfall? Am I going to die if I let go of this thing? So I look at Beth and I say, I love you, honey. Been a good first year of marriage. Well, eventually our guide came back and he saw these poor souls dangling there, and he says, it's okay, let go, you'll be fine. So we did one of those 1, 2, 3, and we let go at the same time, and whew, the river sweeps us away. And I have no control over my body, and I'm choking in all this water, and my rear end is hitting every rock in that river. And I didn't like that feeling. So guess what I tried to do? I just tried to stand up. And as soon as I did that, boom, the river knocks me down, and I'm just choking in a panic. I just try to stand up a second time. Boom, it knocks me down. Again, just an instinct. I'm trying to stand up against the river, and knocks me down a third time. And finally I remember, don't try to stand up in the river. So I grab my life jacket, got above the surface, took in some much-needed H2O, made it off to the side. I climbed out of the river, and I walked about a half mile downstream, and I found my wife, and she was alive, and we've not been kayaking since. But it's really hard to stand up against the current of a powerful river. And it's also really hard to stand up against the current of our culture. We live in a culture that does not support a real authentic vision of love, marriage, sexuality, certainly not a Christian vision. And it's leading us away to kind of think about these things, think about dating relationships, to think about romance, to think about sexuality and marriage, to think of it in ways that are contrary to what Jesus has revealed about what's really going to make us happy, in ways that just aren't really going to work. It's hard to stand up against the current of our culture. You think about all that's happened since the so-called sexual revolution of the 1960s. You know, ever since then, everyone's just saying things like, oh, you need to put aside religion. That's what the cultural revolution said in the 60s. Set aside religion, set aside tradition. When it comes to dating and sexuality and marriage, you don't need all that. And forget about what your parents say. No, you just need to be authentic and express yourself however you want. You don't need to follow some random rules from your religion. No, just be yourself. And if we can just express ourselves however we want, free from the shackles of tradition and or religion and church, we're going to be happier. Dating relationships will be better. Marriages will be better. Family life will be so much better because you're going to be yourself, not just following some rules. Well, we know that the sexual love revolution is not delivered on the goods. You don't have to be a sociologist to look out and see. Are marriages better today? Are dating relationships better today? Is family life better today? I don't want to idealize things and make it sound like, oh, in the 1930s, everything was just perfect. No, there were many problems back then. But would we say marriages are better? Let's just take marriage for example. What's the big statistic that's often quoted about marriage, about the big challenge of marriage? Divorce. And what percent of marriages typically end in divorce? What's the statistic? Okay, about 50% of marriages ending in divorce, they say. Now, that's sad. That's tragic. I'm not going to talk about divorce today, not because it's not a real issue. It's just everybody talks about it. I want to be clear, though, it is a real issue. I've had dear friends go through the pain and heartache of divorce. I've seen them and accompanied them in the midst of this, and it's so hard. I don't wish it on anyone. And more than that, I would say for the last 20 years, working with young people like you in college or young professionals in their 20s, I've worked with thousands and thousands of young adults for the last 20 years. And I've often heard from many of them who came from broken homes. As they start emerging into adulthood, professional life, and enter into serious relationships of their own, they start realizing how maybe the effects of their coming from a broken home have affected them. They didn't realize it when they were younger, but now they're realizing, oh, I respond in certain ways, and they're entering into serious relationships of their own, and there's insecurities and different fears, and there's different wounds that are there. And so I want to be clear, divorce is a serious thing, and it's wounded many, many people's lives. It's a serious topic. I'm not going to talk about that today because I think everyone always talks about that. I want to talk about what I like to call the other 50%. The other 50%, those marriages that stay together, how are those marriages doing? Are those marriages thriving? Are those marriages that are growing in love and trust and friendship, where they really feel close to each other like they've married their best friend? Let's talk about that side of the equation. How are those marriages doing? Some studies show that out of the marriages that stay together, guess what percent are actually truly close? They really feel like they have emotional intimacy, like they really feel really close together, like they've married their best friend. Guess what percentage? It's a little over 12%. So picture that. 50% end in divorce. Go to math class. Remember like the pie diagram? In math class. So picture half of the pie diagram shaded in black. So half into divorce. We're just talking about the side that stays together. There's just a little sliver of that pie diagram, 12% that are really thriving, really happy. When you sign up to get married, thank God bless people that stay together and through really tough times. It's really heroic, right? But when you get married someday, your hope isn't, I just hope we stay together. I mean, imagine like if we see each other, let's say at Seek next year, you all come to St. Louis and you're going to be at Seek and you say, oh, Dr. Shree, I remember you talked about marriage. How's your marriage going? How are things with you and Beth? And I said, oh, our marriage? It's awesome. Wow, Dr. Shree, what's made your marriage so awesome? Oh, it's so awesome because we haven't divorced yet. Like, I mean, a marriage that stays together, that's a great thing, but that doesn't make a great marriage in and of itself. A great marriage is not just a marriage that stays together, it's one that grows in love. 10, 20, 30 years from now, you can look each other in the eye and say, I love you more now today than I did when we were first married. That's what we long for. That's what we long for. But the culture's vision for love, what the culture is selling us, this is what love is all about. This is what sex is all about. This is what marriage is all about. What the culture is selling us is not working. In fact, it's ruining people's lives. That's why one of my great heroes, St. John Paul II, dedicated his whole life to young people like you. Did you know that? He was a young chaplain in Krakow working with university students. And he invested a lot of his time with them. He remained friends with them all throughout his life, all the way up to the moment right before he dies. Right before he died in 2005, the last message he had sent out was to his old friends, the young people he invested in like 50 years beforehand. He dedicated himself to young people and especially their struggles in dating relationships and in their marriages and in their families. And he gave us a great gift. You might know it as Theology of the Body, but I want you to know the real book behind Theology of the Body. If you want to really understand the vision for what love and marriage and sexuality is all about and dating, read the earlier book, Love and Responsibility. So many people jump to Theology of the Body, but that's as many people say. I was just talking with Damon Owens about this yesterday. That Theology of the Body is great, but it's love and responsibility that changes the way you wake up on Tuesday morning and treat your wife, or treat your girlfriend, or treat the person of the opposite sex. So that's what I'm going to get into today. I want to talk about these great principles. Let's start off with a word of prayer. I want to ask Our Lady on this great feast day of Mary. You love Mary, don't you? Let's ask Mary to pray for us here and honor her on this day. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Now, I want to talk about a couple basic things really quick before we get to the nuts and bolts. There's two really basic things I need to cover that JP2 addresses at the beginning of his work, and then we're going to get to all the fun dynamics between men and women that he brings out. But first, two basic principles. First, the first one is the personalist principle. The personalist principle. I don't want to get too technical. I just want to make sure you know this. It's really basic. It's an ethical principle that JP2 throws out there that he thinks most people can agree to, no matter what religion you're from or no religion at all. I think we can agree to this, he says. And it's the idea that we should never treat another person merely as a means to our own end. I should never treat another person merely as a means to my own end. That every person has their own dignity. They have their own intellect, their own mind, the ability to think for themselves. They have their own free will to choose for themselves. And so if I'm going to use someone for my own purposes, it's just kind of violating the dignity and the order in which every person is made. And so basically, don't use people. And we all can kind of get that, especially as Christians. Yeah, we probably shouldn't use people. But JP2 then, secondly, points out that in the age in which we live, this modern world, there's such a utilitarian attitude out there where we're looking out at life and we're constantly making decisions based on what's useful for me. I think of what's going to be giving me more benefit, more investment, more pleasure, more comfort, more interest. What is going to be more interesting, beneficial for me, advantageous for me? And that's fine with basic things in life, like if I go outside and it's pouring rain, it would be useful to use an umbrella. Ding, I get the umbrella out. That's okay to do that. You're deciding what class you're going to take next semester, and you could say, okay, I could take this rocket science class, but I'm an accounting major, so that's not really going to help me, so I should take this advanced accounting class that counts for my requirements. That's a utilitarian decision. Go for it. You're going to invest in the stock market. You want to invest in a company that's going to give you a good ROI. That's awesome. Go for it. We make utilitarian decisions all the time, and in things in the world, that's okay. The challenge comes when we take those utilitarian principles and we apply them to the people in our lives. And I start evaluating the people in my family, the people in my community, in my dorm, and my friendships. I look at my friend not as a person that has great dignity on their own, but I look at them more in terms of what I get out of them. What do they do for me? They're advantageous for me to know. They help me get a good grade in this class. They help me study. That's useful for me. But the problem is that if I'm not in that same class anymore, or I change majors, that person, am I really going to be committed to them? No, because I'm not really committed to them. I'm just committed to what I get out of them. I don't need to get that out of them anymore. Or this person, they give me pleasure. They give me fun times. I'm not really committed to you. I'm just committed to what I get out of you. That's the spirit of our age. I want you to keep that in the back of your mind as we move forward now. And I want to take a look at the fun relationship dynamics that John Paul II presents for us here. Okay, ready? So we're going to talk about attraction. I want to talk about attraction now. What goes on when boy meets girl? There's that initial spark of attraction. I can't think of anyone better than JP2 that has shed light on the mystery of attraction. So ready? So let's just picture the scene. You're at your campus, and there's some coffee house, on the edge of campus there. And let's say there's some guy on Saturday morning who's sitting there sipping his coffee. He's got his book, and all of a sudden, a group of women come in, and there's this one really just knockout, gorgeous gal, and he's immediately attracted to her. He sees her walk in, he puts the book down, and he's noticing her beauty. And he looks down, reads a line, and now he looks up again. Now she's over there, and he takes a sip of coffee, looks down. Now he sees her over there getting her coffee now. And he is just immediately drawn to her physical beauty. But the attraction is more than physical. You see, this guy has seen this woman here with her friends on other Saturday mornings, which is why he's here again this Saturday morning. And he's been drawn not just to her good looks, but to her personality. She seems really fun. She seems outgoing. She laughs a lot, and he's really drawn to her personality. There's something more than just the physical attraction. These kinds of attractions happen all the time, and we don't even have to work at it, right? You don't have to wake up in the morning, dear Jesus, please help me to be attracted to someone today. It just kind of happens, right? There's a guy at the checkout line, all of a sudden, beautiful girl walks by, ding, he's attracted, right? There's some gal at the Newman Center, she comes back after Christmas break, and all of a sudden, there's a gathering at the campus ministry, and there's a new guy here who transferred, and he's really handsome. And wow, and you get this long conversation with him on that opening night of to get to know new people, and you can't stop thinking about him all day long. And again, these things just happen all the time. What's going on in an attraction when boy meets girl? Well, John Paul II says this. He says, every person has value for who they are as a child of God, a daughter or son of God. We're all made in the image and likeness of God. But we all have also sexual value. And sexual value is the things we notice first. When you walk around, you just don't happen to notice, oh, child of God. Oh, you have a spiritual soul that'll last for all eternity. You can't see that, or you don't notice the person's character right away. What a virtuous man that is. What a generous woman that is. She's got a great heart of soul. Those things you don't notice right away. What you do notice is she is really good looking, or what you notice is, the personality. He is so funny. Those things stand out more. And John Paul II refers to that as the sexual value, and it's what you notice most. And now I'm going to talk about the two parts of the sexual value of each person here. So I'm going to put up on the screen. Okay, they told me there was a box here, so I can't see. Okay, yeah, attraction. Here we go. Okay, so on one hand, there's a sensual attraction, which is a physical attraction to the body of the person of the opposite sex. So I'm attracted to their physical features, basically their good looks. But then there's something more, and he refers to this as an emotional attraction. This is a sentimental attraction, and it's attraction to the psychological qualities. So sensuality is an attraction to the physical qualities of the person, their body, their good looks, the physical features. And the emotional attraction is an attraction to the psychological qualities. And John Paul II explains that as the masculinity or the femininity of the other person. Now, he doesn't really define that I wish he did. Everyone always asks me, well, what does it mean to be really feminine? I want to be, a feminine woman, modern, and all this, but I want to be truly feminine. I want to be really masculine. What does it mean to be a man? I wish he explained it, and sadly, he doesn't really give much definition here. He basically just says this, ready? He says, a man is attracted to the woman's femininity, parentheses, quotation marks, her charm. That's all he says. And a woman is attracted to the man's masculinity, parentheses, quotation marks, his strength. I'm not sure all that he means by that. I think of it on a very simple level, that we're attracted to that mystery of the opposite sex, the mystery of the woman, the mystery of the man. What's most important here, I want you to see, is just that there's these two levels. There's the physical, but it's more than physical. There's also this emotional attraction. And these attractions are good. God made us this way. We're wired this way. He made us to be attracted, to notice the physical qualities and the psychological qualities. But those qualities are meant to lead us to something deeper. Both the physical and the psychological qualities are meant to lead us ultimately to the person who possesses those qualities. Because the person is so much more than their body, and so much more than just their masculinity or femininity, their true dignity as a son or daughter of God. It's meant to lead us to that. So God made us this way. And here's another thing to think about. These qualities don't reside in the abstract. They don't reside in the abstract. They only reside in concrete persons who possess those qualities. That's why we're driven this way. They're meant to lead us to the person. So for example, let me just make this really simple for you. There's no guy that wakes up on Monday morning and just says, I'm so attracted to blonde in the abstract. Oh, I need blonde. I got to go find some blondness out there. No. A guy might be very attracted to a particular woman who has blonde hair, but there's no guy that's just attracted to blonde in the abstract. The blondness resides in a person. And that initial attraction is meant to not just notice her blonde hair and her good looks, but to notice her, who she is. Similarly, there's no woman that wakes up on Tuesday morning and says, I need masculinity. Oh, I need masculinity. I got to go find some masculinity. I need some masculinity. That's crazy, right? No. She may be very attracted to a particular man who possesses masculine qualities, but she's not attracted to masculinity in the abstract. These qualities reside in the person, and they're meant to lead us to the person. The problem is we get stuck on just the qualities themselves and the pleasure we derive from them, or the enjoyment we derive from them, or the good feelings we derive from them. That's the problem. You see, we as human beings, we actually have control over what's going on in our sexual sphere. We're not like the animals. John Paul II points out that in the animal world, sexuality it's more based on instinct. It's kind of like, remember when you go to the doctor and they got that little, triangular little rubber thing hits your knee and it's just kind of reflex mode of action, right? Like that's what goes on in the sexual sphere of animals and many of their appetites too. Like it's just kind of like they just act. It's just like reflex. They don't like deliberate and think about it. Like let's just take the appetite of food, for example. Like if there was a hungry dog in this neighborhood that hasn't eaten in a week, and we brought that dog in here and we brought him right on stage and you put a big juicy steak here on stage, what's that dog gonna do? What's that dog? Is it gonna run up and go, oh wait, I'll let the lady dogs go first? I don't think so. Or is the dog gonna run up to him and go, oh wait, it's a Friday in Lent? No. The dog's just gonna act on its appetite and devour the steak. Now let's go to the sexual sphere. Let's take a cat in heat. Let's say there's a cat in heat in the neighborhood here. Is that cat in heat gonna go around and, interview different male cats and discern the relationship? I'm gonna do a little novena now and finally I choose this one, you, Mr. Cat, to be with you in good times or in bad sickness. No! The cat in heat just acts. It just acts on its instinct. And so there's no thought, there's no deliberation, there's no pondering. But in human persons, we have an intellect, we have a free will, and we can direct our emotions. So when we notice that initial spark of attraction towards someone else, we notice that initial spark of attraction to someone, we can either let it lead us to just, I want to look at their body. and I just want to focus on their body and the pleasure I get thinking about their body or looking lustfully at their body, I can let it guide me. I can let that initial emotional attraction guide me. I can be a slave to my sensuality, or I can choose to say, oh, I notice their good looks, but more than that, I want to notice them. I want to notice who they are. That's why JP2 says we have to have great responsibility for what we do in the sexual sphere. Now, let's turn to these different areas of attraction. And I just want to highlight a little bit on some of the ways that we might fall astray in our relationships. I'm not going to talk a lot about sensuality. There's a lot of great chastity speakers. Jason Everett was here. Go read his stuff. He's got awesome stuff on chastity. But I want to just make a certain point. I think we all know that sex is made for a total self-gift. It's not just about recreation, not just about pleasure. It's not just any ordinary expression of love, but we love each other. Can't we do this? No. It's meant to be a total gift of myself. I love you totally. I accept you totally. And the challenge is when we engage in sex apart from that total commitment of marriage, it's basically I'm saying to you, I accept everything about you. I love you, and I'm totally committed to you until something better comes along. Because I really haven't made a commitment to you yet. And the challenge is there are many Christians that know this, but they still compromise. I've had many people tell me, saying, all the love stories we know about, the ones we watch on Netflix and the ones we watch from Hollywood, all the love stories end with the couple in bed. And so I'm Catholic, I know the church's teaching, I've heard about theology of the body, but it just makes me second guess. Are we missing out on something in our relationship because our story isn't ending like all the beautiful love stories we see in the secular culture today? We've got to be reminded of the truth. But I want to tell you about some of the, for the book that I wrote, I ended up interviewing many people, many college students, focus students, and focus missionaries, and then I just had young adults around the world that had been reading the book, and so I interviewed them when we came out with the new edition, included their stories in this. And I want to share with you what some people said. One young woman talked about how, and I've heard this many times, women that know what's right, but they compromise. And she says this: if I start by giving him what he wants, then maybe he'll come to love me as a person. I heard many women say things like that. Another young woman put it this way, quote, I knew he was just using me, and I let him. I thought that if I were to go along with this for a while, then he would eventually change and come to love me. I will tell you that I have heard this countless times over the last 20 years, over and over again, not just from people in the Midwest or Texas or California or New York. I've heard it from people in Ireland, in England, Dubai, Vienna, Australia, all over the world. I meet young adults, and many of the women especially have admitted, I compromised here, and I was doing it to try to keep the relationship. I just desperately wanted to keep the relationship, and I thought that I would win his heart. Like I knew that he wasn't really committed to me, but I thought if I compromised and had sex with him, that then it would make him be committed to me. And I want to tell the ladies in this room especially, and the men too, but especially the ladies, I will tell you that every woman has always said it never works. It never works. I've never heard of a story saying, oh yeah, I did this and then it worked. I won his heart. It never works. It always ended in disappointment. It always ended in a disaster. And so don't compromise, don't give up on this matter. So I won't say more about this kind of chastity on this side of the equation of sensuality, but I do want to talk about the emotional side of things, sentimentality. This one's not talked about as much. John Paul II has an amazing statement. It's pretty radical. He says that feelings are often misleading. In fact, he says feelings are blind. Now that's a pretty strong statement there. Feelings are blind. Now he's not saying feelings are bad. You want to have feelings in a relationship. In fact, he points out, he goes like, yeah, if a couple's married, and they don't have feelings, that's a problem. Like if I just say, hey, Beth, I love you. I'm committed to you. I would never leave you. I would die for you. I have absolutely no feelings for you, but I'm committed. Like that's not the ideal marriage, right? Like feelings are, when you have those emotionals, like you're entering into the other person's sphere. You're entering into what's going on in their life. You're connecting heart to heart. That's a really good thing. It's just that should not be the measure for what love is. If I want to know, am I in love? Should I know, is this the person I'm supposed to marry? If I want to know, is our marriage going well? Is this dating relationship going well? What we don't want to do is turn to feelings as the primary thermometer. And unfortunately, that's exactly what the culture is holding up many times and saying, search your feelings. Then you'll know if you're really in love. So John Paul II makes the big statement, feelings are blind. Why does he say that? I mean, is he against feelings? No, of course not. But let's just do a little basic, there's theology 101 here, or just basic philosophy 101. So every person has a mind. They have an intellect to think for themselves. Every person has a free will to choose for themselves. And then we have the passions and the emotions. Now, which power of the soul, the mind, the will, or the feelings, which power of the soul discerns truth? If you want to know the truth about something, where do you turn? Do you turn to your mind? Do you turn to your will? Or do you turn to your feelings? Where do you turn? If you're in math class and the teacher puts on the board 2 + 2 equals, what part of your soul are you using to figure out it equals 4? Your mind, right? You're using your mind. That's obvious, right? But what if some kid in the back of class says, but wait, teacher, for me, 2 + 2 just feels like 5. 2 + 2 just feels like 5. Just get these warm feelings, because 5 has those 2 straight lines and the curve. It just feels right? You're just like, that person's crazy, right? So the same is true when it comes to if you're trying to figure out, should I date this person? Is this the kind of person I want to marry? Maybe you're just asking on your own end, am I ready for a serious relationship? Do we work well together? Would this be a good kind of relationship? Those are questions of the mind. They're not questions of the emotions. It doesn't mean emotions don't play a role at all. It's just that's what you want to lead with. You want to ask the questions of truth. You want to ask questions like, does this person have character? Do they have virtue? Anyone could say, I love you. Some people might really mean it, but it takes virtue to actually equip someone to love you, to seek what's best for you. That's what love is, to will the good of the other person, to seek what's best for the other person. No matter how many feelings someone may have for you, if they don't know what's best for you, or they lack the virtue to lead you to what's good, they are just not free to love you. They're not able to love you because they don't have the skills of love. They don't have virtue. We've got to ask the question of virtue. And that's a question of the mind. No matter how many feelings I get around this person, it doesn't matter if that person, let's say there's a gal here that's really attracted to some guy. And this guy is really handsome, and he could be really funny in social settings, but the guy just spends hours and hours playing video games all day long. Every day he's playing video games. As a woman, she should be thinking, he might be really handsome, but he's training his will just to entertain himself all the time. That means it's not going to be easy for him to get out of himself and make sacrifices to serve other people and be committed to other people because he's just focused on, he's training himself to entertain himself all the time. That's a question of the mind. No matter how many feelings you have, that's not going to change. Same thing, some guy might be really attractive. She's really good looking and all that, and she looks so pretty. Okay, that's wonderful. But can she carry a lot of weight in life? And I don't mean just physical weight, although that happens too when you have a baby. But I mean, can she shoulder a lot of responsibility? Is this the person you want to be the mother of your children? Do you want your children imitating her and her qualities? Because your children have spent hours and hours, thousands of hours with this woman. Those are questions of the mind. They're not questions of feelings. And yet our culture just gets us to think of what is love. Love is all about feelings. And it's all about emotions, Think about the famous love songs that are out there. What are all the love songs all about? I mean, they're about 2 things. And it's the 2 things we've been talking about. But again, they're counterfeits of authentic love. On one hand, love is either just all totally about sensuality, right? It's like Ed Sheeran love. I'm in love with your body. I'm in love with the shape of you. And though my heart's kind of in it, it's really just about your body. I mean, he comes out so crassly and just says that. Reducing the other person just to a body that I exploit for my own sexual pleasure, that's what Ed Sheeran love is. Now, I'm not trying to pick on Ed Sheeran. He's got a lot of great songs. But that one's just, let me just say, that one's far from perfect. So, but, okay. But either love is that or it's all this emotional stuff, right? It's things like, all I need is you. No, you need a lot more, like oxygen and water and many other things, Or I can't live without you. Yes, you can. You lived 19 years without this person. You really can live without them. But it's all this, all this emotion. It's all these feelings, right? And you're just swept away. And that's the culture we breathe in. We take this in all the time. Now there's a movie I always pick on. It's an old movie, but I bet you've all seen it. You've all seen the movie Titanic? Right, that old 90s movie, Titanic? So I would argue that the vision for love in the movie Titanic may be worse than the original shipwreck. Here we go, okay? You ready? I want you to work with me on it. Now I know, don't get me wrong, Jack dies for Rose. Noble, total, self-giving love. I love it. I applaud that. That's great. It's just the rest of the movie is a disaster, and here's why. Okay, I want you to bring your mind to that movie. You all remember the movie? Bring your mind to that movie for a moment. By the way, did you know that teenage girls, when that movie came out, teenage girls went to the theater and watched that movie over and over and over again. And then when it came out on DVD, they watched it even more. They kept watching it over and over and over again. Do you know why? Why did all these girls keep going back and watching that movie over and over again? I have a theory. I think it's because teenage girls love movies about boats. I'm just kidding. No, because it fits in to the total kind of hyper-sentimental, emotional view of love that's out there, right? Yeah, okay, but I want you to not just be led by your emotions. I want you to be led by your mind. Bring your mind to the movies and the shows you watch. Ask questions. Use your mind. So when you watch this movie here, let's think about it. So the two main characters, Jack and Rose, how long did they know each other? Like 3-4 days, right? I mean, they barely knew each other. And yet so many people say, oh, but this was the perfect love if the ship didn't wreck. This would have been the love that would have lasted forever. Oh, how sad the ship had to go down. And I'm thinking, they didn't even know each other. It was like 3 or 4 days. And then even on those 3 or 4 days, how much time did they actually spend together? They barely spend any time together, right? Because she's in the first class cabins and he's down in the peasant class. They barely knew each other. Let me ask another question. What did Jack do for a living? Do you remember Jack? What did he do for a living? He was a painter. Yeah, that's what you would tell your mom. Oh yeah, I found a painter. Yeah. What did he paint? Gamble. Well, he did gamble too. But what did he paint? He painted naked women. Hey mom, I found a great guy. He paints naked women. But think about it. Okay, so you're just swept away in this movie. They don't really know each other. And you come away thinking, this was the perfect love. It's not real. It's just playing with our emotions. I mean, here's the picture of love on Titanic. Remember this scene? Here's the picture of love. This is love. Do you know, my wife read an article like a few years after the movie came out saying that ever since that movie came out, cruise liners have to put security guards at the front of the ship because all these people want like their boyfriends to kind of hold them. They just and imitate that scene. Just hold me like Jack held Rose. Then I know you really love me. We'll play Celine Dion in the background. It'll be really special. But that's what happens. We just take in all these models of love from the culture. I want you to be really careful. I normally don't bring this up. I feel called to just say this to all of you right now. I want to challenge you on something. Be careful what you put in your mind. Be careful what you put in your mind. Don't ever say it doesn't affect me. Think about the shows you watch. Are those the kinds of shows that you want shaping your view of life? Because God made us in such a way that what we put in our head really does affect us. It starts to shape our desires, and it ends up shaping what we end up wanting to pursue in life. It really does affect us. I mean, the people in the secular world get this, right? That's why major corporations will spend millions and millions of dollars to show you a 30-second ad on Super Bowl Sunday. Why do they spend that money to show you a 30-second ad? Because they don't know it doesn't affect you. No, they know. They've done all the psychological studies. They know how they do certain images, it will move you. And so be careful. Think about the shows you watch. Are those the people you want to spend time with? Are those the people you want shaping your imagination? Are those the people you want in your memory to draw upon in the difficulties you face in life? Really be careful what you put in your mind. Be discerning about that because it really does affect you. It starts to shape you. I'll tell you, that's a true story. There was a woman I met on a plane. I was going to go speak at a marriage conference, and this is a woman in her mid-30s, super professional, dressed. She has a master's in business, and she's a devout Christian. She was a Lutheran. She was involved in her church, involved in Bible study, and she asked me what I was going to talk about. I was telling her about some of these ideas about love, and I'm sharing what authentic love is, and all of a sudden, I just shared for like 5 minutes. She goes, "Thank you. I think you just saved my marriage." I was like, "I'm just talking very basic stuff about what love is." She goes, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Well, I've been married for 7 years, and my husband's a great guy, but it hasn't worked out like I thought." I go, "Well, what's wrong? What's wrong? Is he cheating on you? What's happening?" He goes, "No, it's just our marriage isn't like all the love songs I listen to on the radio." I was like, "What?" Here, this again, a very smart person, really professional, and also a devout Christian. She's involved in Bible studies. But what's her model for love? Is her model for love the Bible? Is her model for love what Jesus says about love? Is it what God teaches about love? No, what's her model? It's what she's listening to on the radio. And she was in a marriage crisis over this. Be careful about what you put in your mind. It might wreck your life if you're not careful. So that's a little sad side note. I wasn't planning on talking about that, but I felt called to tell you. So let's go on. Last couple things here I want to get to here about this emotional, like being swept away by our emotions. Our emotions. John Paul II highlights how we tend to exaggerate the qualities of the other person. When we become emotionally committed, he says, in the eyes of a person emotionally committed to another person, the value of our beloved grows enormously, as a rule, out of all proportion to his or her real value. What does he mean by this? He says that, so you meet somebody, and all of a sudden you immediately exaggerate their qualities. You make their qualities be so much better than they really are. Why? Because you desire to find that Mr. Right, that Mrs. Right. I think about, let's just take that example again, like that woman at the Newman Center. She meets some guy, at the January event, and he's halfway good looking, and he has about 5 of the top 12 qualities that she's looking for in the man. Those qualities she wrote down in a book once, and she keeps these qualities in her Bible maybe. She meets some guy, she has a 20-minute conversation with him, and she notices, wow, there's some potential here. And she has a 20-minute conversation with him, and then she can go home that night, and she can't wait for the next Newman Center gathering, and she's just thinking about him all the time. She's praying about him. She's thinking about that wedding dress now. Okay, you're laughing, ladies, but you know it's true. You've done it. I've had women tell me all over the world, yeah, that wedding dress thing, yeah, we do that. Guys, be careful. Cut it off at 19, okay? 19 minutes. You go beyond 19 minutes, they make a go wedding dress there, so you might want to be careful. But here's the thing, what's going on there, right? You meet somebody, and then you start to exaggerate their qualities. You just make them so great. I think about a friend of mine I went to college with. He had a lot of ups and downs with guys, and he'd meet some girl, and you'd just be so taken in by her, and then they'd break up 4 months later. It's like every 4 months you get breaking up. And it was just the same pattern. He had this one line. There was always this one line. I was like, oh no, I hope this doesn't happen again. And he'd start dating some new girl, and he'd always say things like, oh, she had to be athletic. Like, oh yeah, she likes to run, or she likes to bike, because he was really athletic, and she's really good looking. And then he says, oh, but she's really caring. She thinks about other people, and she reminds me of my mom. It's like, oh, not the mom line again, come on. And he would say this about girl after girl, and you could tell what's going on. Again, he's idealizing this person. She's got a couple good qualities, really honest good qualities here, but all of a sudden exaggerating the qualities of the person. Why do we do that? It's because deep down in our heart, we long to find that perfect person that's going to fulfill all our emotional needs, we hope. This perfect person is going to be Mr. Right, Mrs. Right. So I notice a couple qualities, and all of a sudden I heap up on them so many more qualities. I make them so special. Like this gal meets this guy, and she's got 5 of those top 12 qualities, but she throws all 12 upon him and makes him all of a sudden, he's just like blessed Pier Giorgio. I mean, he's really special. And she's thinking about that wedding. I can picture the wedding picture. We're going to be up there on the mountain with the pipe, and it'll be right there. It'll be really special. But we exaggerate the qualities. Why? John Paul II explains, because I like the rush of emotion I get from thinking I might have found Mrs. Right or Mr. Right. But in the end, do I really love that person? I'm not in love with that person. I'm in love more with this ideal I created, this ideal image, not the real person. And I'm using that person. I'm using them just to get this rush of good feelings, these romantic emotions in me. I'm not really committed to the person. I'm just committed to the emotions I get out of them. Did you know you can use people emotionally, not just sexually, physically? But many times we could just kind of flirt with people, or we like the attention we get, or I exaggerate their qualities, I get overly emotionally committed. And it's because I love the rush of the feelings, but I'm not in love with the person, I'm in love with the ideal. And what's gonna happen is eventually the real person is gonna emerge. Because I'll catch them on a bad day, or I notice like some of their faults. Maybe be dating for a while and now they're not as perfect as I thought, and I don't get this rush of emotion. I'm kind of frustrated with them now. I'm frustrated because they're not giving me this enjoyment, these good feelings anymore, and so I'm frustrated. And that's why so many relationships end in disillusionment, John Paul II says. I remember at Benedictine, it was really funny when I was a teacher there, you'd see these really serious Catholic students. They were very serious. They didn't do dating, they did courtship with a capital C. I mean, it was really, really serious, and they go on a date and then it'd be like, well, what are you doing now? Well, we're discerning the relationship. We're gonna do a 54-day novena to discern if we should go out for coffee again. It's really serious, but there'd be these upperclassmen that would fall in love and they'd be dating. It was always very Catholic, right? We hold hands at the Our Father, but in that special way, and we pray after communion. We go for rosary walks. It's all Jesus-centered. It's all really special. And then all the freshmen would look up to them and admire them. And wow, I hope to have a Catholic dating relationship like that someday. And then all of a sudden, like 4 months later, these guys, the guy and gal, break up, hate each other's guts, can never be in the same room, and it's just really conflict. And all the freshmen are wondering, oh, what happened? They had Jesus in the middle. How could that happen? I'm like, what do you mean how could it happen? This is idealization. That's what was going on. They idealize that you can bring Jesus in the middle of it, and especially start opening up and praying too quickly, too soon together. We talk about modesty on a physical level. We shouldn't, dress in a certain way that exposes us too much, right? But we ought to be emotionally modest too. You don't meet some guy at Seek and then stay up till 2 a.m. on New Year's Eve and start telling each other the life story, and here's my deepest wounds, and this is how many children I hope to have, and which form of NFP do you want to use? I mean, that's just not appropriate. And I remember at LSU years ago, Curtis tells a story, they used to take the guys' Bible studies and girls' Bible studies in Campus Crusades. This is in a Catholic setting. But one spring semester, they decided to make prayer partners between the guys and the girls' studies. And so each guy was assigned a girl, and they became prayer partners that spring semester. So picture what happened. Here we are, we've got Johnny here. Okay, it's like right before spring break, and he's praying with Sally, and he puts his hand on his shoulder and says, oh, dear Heavenly Father, I am so thankful for Sally, this beautiful daughter of God. And she's about to go home, and she's got some tough situations with her family. I pray that you may bless her. I pray that she may know how much, you love her so much. It'd be kind of, and just picture they're praying together, opening up all this stuff, and then they all start dating. It's spring semester especially, right? So they all start dating, but then they go away for the summer. And then when they all come back after 3 months of reality, guess what happened when they all came back in the fall? They weren't dating anymore, and it caused a big tension in their movement on campus, right? Because they came back to reality check, away from all that emotions, but we want to be careful not to open up and share too much too soon and get emotionally trapped. So there's so many more things I wish we could get into, but we are closing our time together here. Let me just close with this. If you want to know what real love is not just looking inside, looking inward and checking how much sensual attraction do I have and how much emotional attraction do I have. John Paul II says that's not actually love. That's just you're having a psychological reaction to people. That's all it is. It's like, oh, you notice their body and you're moved and you like having good feelings. That's not real love. Is not so self-centered. Real love is looking outward and you're seeking the good of this other person. That's what love is, to will the good of the other, the church teaches, to seek what's best for this other person, and that requires virtue. I need virtue in my life to love this person. I want to use my mind to discern, does this person have virtue? Can they love me? No one's perfect unless you were in the Holy Family, and even there, Joseph was a saint, but Mary was the only perfect one there in that marriage. That is, Jesus was perfect too, of course. But you get the point. So no one's going to be perfect. You're not going to find the perfect person, but you at least want to ask the question of virtue. No one's ever truly ready for marriage. You get thrown into it, and God's grace will help you through it, but you want to bring your mind in. You don't want to be led by your emotions. That's when people make so many mistakes.